Whoa. Whoa. I'm in
What's
the building.
going on?
What's going on?
I thought you was going to do another one of your entrances. Come on, come on camera all late.
Yeah, I forgot.
I forgot. You're like, where's Rob?
Listen, you know how it works, right? My bad, man. My bad. I got to keep up with the tradition. Come on, just popping in on them. Just popping in.
Yeah. How you doing, bro?
I'm good, man. I don't have any complaints, man. Just out here rocking. You know what I mean? Shaking and baking like Barry Sanders on the field.
Hey, man, be careful. You don't want to blow a knee out.
Barry ain't blow no knee. Barry ain't blow no knee. That's why I ain't say Bo Jackson.
Oh, man.
That's why I ain't say Bo Jackson or anybody else who ran into injuries. I said Barry Sanders.
Yeah, he got up out of there.
Maybe it wasn't so much about him working out to get to it. You know, the rest of them dudes might have hit the weights, you know, and built on them. Nah, Barry said, listen, I wiggled out the womb.
Bo was just a freak accident.
Yeah, I know.
That was just a freak accident. But welcome, Level Up Past Corporate Trauma podcast audience and community. And we got another hot episode for you tonight. Yo, Rob.
As usual.
I'm feeling like we are being blessed to be just a couple of weeks ahead of the headlines.
Oh yeah.
You know what I'm saying? I mean, and you know, which really just means we're tuned in to the people that we have decided to set up a platform for and serve, right? You know, shout out to comedian Corey Rodriguez last week for popping in with a great episode, Power of Words and Their Hypocrisy. Shout out to Pierre Campbell, Leadership Management and DEI and the Great Resignation, which is my segue, and then Ali James, Operational Leadership, our leadership series. You know, so tonight we don't have a guest, so we're just gonna recap a couple of things that we may have talked about over the last couple of weeks because we go fast, right? And we have to slow down to let the headlines catch up with everything that you, our audience, has shared with us. I mean, a lot of what we talk about comes from our community, right? The corporate trauma community and the Level Up community. A lot of what we talk about, you know, people hit us up, and man, you sent me a clip, that Great Resignation clip. Man, that was incredible. Man, my thoughts on it, and you know, I definitely, because we didn't get a chance to talk about it, but I wanted to bring it back up because it seems like, you know, literally it's picking up steam, and people are, and it's not, and the Great Resignation is not exclusive to corporate professionals that are climbing the ladder, right? These are those people, as well as everyday people from every walk of life, from every facet of professional endeavor, right,
Mm-hmm.
are leaving. The guy that sticks out in my mind, he said he was stacking his 401k, and was investing in cryptocurrency,
Mm-hmm.
left his job because they didn't accommodate his needs, to be perfectly honest. And now he is um, he has decided to start a career as a freelance writer, and he's getting into making movies, and he's working off of his savings. And the interviewer said, "Man, ain't that risky?" He said, "Just about as risky as it was going to work for these for these people." I was
Exactly.
like, "Wow!" Like, and that's exactly what we've been talking about. So, I mean, what stood out for you in that? In that?
The biggest thing for me is I know I'm probably the one that folks when they like, man, Rob is always talking about it, man, just leave. And I'm like, no, leave places that don't fit with who you are and who you see yourself as and where you see yourself going, right? You cannot put lipstick on a pig, right? And think that it's not going to be a pig, that it's going to look better. And that's a lot of times where we run into issues at. So when we're talking about the great resignation, there's a lot of people who have finally gotten to the point and they're saying, hey, why do I keep trying to change this company? This company is a conglomerate. They're a monolith in their thinking. And I'm sitting over here trying to make them different. Why don't I just go and take the power that I do have, which is remove myself from where we are, right? And that's the power. So it's one of those situations where if people don't like how you speak, don't like how you dress, they're not paying you enough. Cool. You're not going to do it. You tell them, hey, I want to raise. If they want you to work from the office and you're like, hey, it really doesn't make sense. Like my role doesn't really need those things. And they're like, nah, but I want you here. And you're like, okay, so this isn't about the role. This is about a power dynamic. So your job now is to say, well, I don't control where the role is supposed to be, but I do control where I be, where I'm going to be at. And it ain't going to be here. So
You
folks are like,
know,
I'm out.
the thing that intrigues me, Rob,
Yeah.
is that always existed, right?
Yes.
That's not a new. But what's intriguing me is that it's so many people at the same
Mm-hmm.
time. One of the examples in the clip that you sent me, lady said her husband passed away in 2015,
Mm-hmm.
and she tried to take a week off, and they told her it was inconvenient,
Mm-hmm.
right? So now fast forward, that's still in the back of her mind that I tried to take a week off for bereavement, right?
Yep.
And it was told to me that it was inconvenient for the job,
Yeah.
for me to not be at work. And so she's been working there for 6 years after this incident and decided to walk away with no alternative because they cut her hours in half, and left her short because now the business is shrinking
Yep.
and is struggling. So to sustain, the
Mm-hmm.
people that have been holding it up have to now they're suffering obviously from very understandable business
Mm-hmm.
being shrinking because of the pandemic. And it was like, yo, so she walked away, she got her hours cut in half, and she
Mm-hmm.
walked away to get zero. You know what I'm saying? So it was still the narrative, right? And the thing that pops up in my mind, and this is what I've been thinking about, and one of the things that I was advising, coaching, and consulting leaders in their respective places where I had the opportunity, is to say, look, slow down.
Mm-hmm.
You have to recognize that this is not business as usual, and that something has happened and it is
Yeah.
impacting people on levels that you cannot readily identify.
Yeah.
Something happened. This is a pandemic. People can't go outside.
No, it's
Why
crazy.
are you managing them as if things are normal some of these leaders were managing people as if like productivity is low in a normal environment. Like, all right, y'all are just not, y'all got to pick it up. No, 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 no. Not only is productivity low, there's a real strong reason for it that is impacting everyone. You know what I'm saying?
But the powers that be are consistently testing their power. Right, man. If I can get you, listen, man. Tell them to come in this office. What they gonna do? Tell them to come in this office. They need to be in here next week because we pay for them to have them butts in the seats. The problem is, it's not that they test their power, and like you said, this has been the case. Like, this was available to people for a long time. The difference is there just hasn't been a mass number of people testing their personal power to make a move, to leave, right? Because change doesn't happen just by one person, right? And a lot of times we celebrate one person who brung about the change, but if that one person was the only person outside with the sign, you're gonna call the person crazy. You're gonna call them crazy.
Right.
When it's 2000, it's like, man, that's turning into something. If you got a million, right? I believe they said last week there was 4 million people who quit their jobs. When you got millions of people saying, I'm out, suckers. You don't own me. You don't own me. You gotta take a step back and you gotta say, well, okay. Many of the states stopped giving out the extra money.
Right.
Right. Many of these people probably won't qualify for unemployment.
Right.
So what happened? Now, if you got the same old school mentality, you're just like, yeah, they were lazy. Well, how about they just didn't enjoy where they were? Right. And in society, we've gotten to a point where, the companies are still in the old school, where a lot of them, it's more lip service around, hey, we want an inclusive workplace, and we want you to feel like this is a place you want to be in, you want to work at. And a lot of folks have gotten to the point where it's like, hey, your ideals don't align with my work, with my life, and my body and my spirit has just told me I need to fly. I need to fly.
You make a great point. You know why? Because what we're seeing is a lot of small businesses and all the way up to big time firms and corporations are being exposed through their inclusion facade. They have used the brand recognition of diversity, equity, and inclusion as a tokenized initiative, right? Because it's a buzzword. It's a hot, you know what I'm saying? We gotta get inclusive. We gotta become diverse. And we have to be equitable, right?
Yes.
But if your initiative, right, is plastic when you really need it to work for you on your behalf because it's plastic, like you're totally exposed. Like the gentleman, one of the other gentlemen in the video said, he was at home and his children was at home because he can't go to the office and they can't go to the school, and his supervisor asked him, like, why aren't you available at this time? Aren't you working? Because there was no thought or consideration that I now am working at home. So the idea of inclusion, of even slowing down and saying something happened. All right, what are people going through? All right, man, there's a lot of people at home. Oh, okay. And a lot of those people that are at home working for us are at home with their families. Okay, so how can we change what we expect to fit what just happened? But if inclusion, if there's nobody at the table that's pushing that narrative, that's pushing that envelope, then your inclusion is a tokenized initiative to make people feel warm and fuzzy. Which leads us right into our conversation. You see what I did there?
I know, man. That's why they call you Brother Jamal from the fifth
Which leads
floor.
us right into our conversation, man.
Yeah.
Tokenism, the inclusion illusion. And man, just the word token is a trigger for me. You know, is it that, you know, coming from where I come from where we come from, you know, being identified as the token is not a good thing. But I don't want to cheapen the meaning of it because it's much broader than, you know, my proverbial face on a brochure, right? It's more than that. You know, but the dictionary definition of tokenism is the practice of making only a perfunctory or symbolic effort to do a particular thing, especially by recruiting a small number of people from unrepresented groups in order to give the appearance of whatever, right? And this also includes initiatives. So I'm going to take a slice of something that I've actually manufactured. It ain't real, but I'm gonna put it. I'm gonna crop it out, right, and make it and blow it up and make it feel big, and then put it out there to people as truth. And this could be, you know, in respect to underrepresented demographic groups, or this could also be inclusive of business practices and schools of thought being included in whatever it is that you're doing. And it's an illusion of inclusion, right? But it's not the real thing. And that's one of the things that is really being exposed right now, because 4 million people are not going to lose their job if they feel included, right?
Yeah. No, that's it. So for me, the ability of people in leadership to highlight the importance of something and then point to the efforts or the representation of something by pointing to one or a number of people and saying, hey, this is what it looks like when there's no true representation, right? So we highlight the idea of being a token, right? Where it's like, hey, that token person is
crawl.
Listen, bro, you gonna get, if you play it right as the token, you probably you could get a lot of resources, right? But usually the token, that person who's one of a kind, right? That person who's the one dot on the back of, or let's say one dot on the back of a Dalmatian, right?
Right.
And there's no other dots though. It's just it's a white dog with one black dot.
Right.
And the dog turns around and is like, yo, look at that black dot back there. Just imagine if we had even more black dots. Imagine how awesome we would be, right? And everybody else is like, yo, but that black dot is awesome. Like, you know, it would be awesome to get more, but they don't put the work in to get more dots. They don't put the work in to make it more inclusive, right? They just talk about they use the jargon, they use the key phrases, they use these words that make people feel like something awesome is happening. And then they point to Brother Jamal and say, hey, we got it. Look at him. And it's like, well, damn, where the rest of the Brother Jamal's?
And I'm over here like,
can I get a Tammy? Can we get a Tammy? Can we get a Keisha? You know, regardless of who it is. And now as being inclusive starts to get more broader, right? You know, finding a way to bring in more of the thoughts, more of these ideals. And the hard work is really being able to level set and find what's there that we have in common, that we agree on, and then saying, okay, how can we celebrate the differences in a way to make them work for us? And that right there, those two things seem to be so hard in this world that people will literally like run up in government buildings, bust down walls, fight cops. They will do a number of different things on the symbol of democracy, to make sure that what they think is right stays right. So there's some things out there, bro. I don't know what we're gonna do. I don't always
Right.
believe it's gonna work.
I mean, because I want to get away. I want to highlight, right, that
Mm-hmm.
tokenism can be personified. Like you could actually use a person or persons to be a token symbol for
Mm-hmm.
something that's not real, right?
Yep.
But there are like token initiatives. They're
Yeah.
like whole operational plans,
Mm-hmm.
like
Mm-hmm.
a whole recruitment strategy. We got to
Yeah.
get diverse. We believe in
Yep.
in that there's talent out there. So what are we gonna
Mm-hmm.
do? We got to go recruit them. And then what we going to recruit them? All right, let's go to 10 HBCUs. Like what? Are you kidding me?
Yeah.
The thing that's mind not mind boggling, but the thing that really makes me laugh, like,
Mm-hmm.
is that some of these tokenized initiatives are so obvious.
Yeah.
Like I'm
Yeah.
like, who came up with this, and why didn't somebody tell them
Mm-hmm.
that the object of your tokenism can see you? We see that.
Mm-hmm.
Like,
Yeah.
I give you an example, right? People who know me know that I went to 3 different colleges in 3 different states, right?
In
Um,
in 3 different months. Never mind. I'm done. I'm done. I'm done. I'm here. Wait, wasn't you just over across the street? No, no, no. All right, I'm leaving. I'm
yeah,
here.
I'm
Oh, I'm
out.
here. Yeah, 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 yeah.
So my first school, right? I left after a
Mm-hmm.
very short time because of a family crisis, and then I re-engaged um, my higher education um, goals through going to a community college. So it was only a
Mm-hmm.
2 year institution, so I had to go back, and leave and go to a 4 year school. And so I went as a student athlete. I went on a recruiting visit.
Mm-hmm.
Saw the school that I ended up going to in the summertime with nobody on campus. All right, so
Mm-hmm.
it did dawn on me, and then so when I got there in the fall, I was like, "Whoa, this is this is very different from what I'm used to. This is not this is not what I expected. There's
Mm-hmm.
representation here, but there's like very little,
Yep.
but enough for me to get by, right?"
Yeah.
Um, and then I started to think about, the longer I spent time there, I started to think about, like, man, what? How did I make this decision? I mean,
Mm-hmm.
I didn't have a whole lot of options, but I had some options, right? And I was like, man, and then one day I was flipping through the brochure,
Mm-hmm.
and
What you
I'm
see
looking
your
at the
face?
brochure after experiencing life there for a while,
Yep.
and
Mm-hmm.
I'm looking at the brochure, and I'm like, is this the same place?
No.
I'm looking at the people in the brochure because I know them. And I'm like, and I'm like, so you chose a handful in this scenario of the people of color that make up a small percentage
Yep.
of students on campus
Mm-hmm.
and made them the
Mm-hmm.
focal point of your brochure that you're sending out. And I was like, yo,
That's called aspirational marketing. I just made
marketing.
I just made that up. I just made it up, but that's called
Hey man, write that down.
aspirational
Whoever's listening, write
marketing.
that down.
Aspirational marketing. Let me see if it's up there. It might be on Google somewhere. Well, go ahead.
So I'm thinking, I'm like, yo, somebody saw this brochure and decided to come here because of that. Right? Somebody's curious. right? Somebody's uncle, somebody's grandparents decided, you know what I mean, to hit up that 401k, decided to, you know what I'm saying, help with the savings account. Like there's money that was expended, like there's government financial aid money that went into somebody's decision to come here based off the look and feel of what was on this brochure. And it was so false.
Hey.
Tokenized aspirational marketing designed, right, to give a false pretense, because once you sign on the dotted line, it's hard to back out, right? So once you're up in there, and I got your transcript, you know what I'm saying? I got, you know what I mean, I got your room, I got your board, I got your meal plan. You know what I'm saying? The semester's already started. You can't leave.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? So it was like an old-fashioned bait and switch. And so my point is that the elaborate lengths that organizations within the corporate industrial complex go through to give false images, either through physical images or narratives, right? Marketing campaigns or whatever, is incredible. And we get caught up in that all the time. And now it's being exposed.
How about this, right? If you want to aspire to something different, right? Then if you don't have the things in place, the people in place, and you want to market that, at least make sure the pieces that you do control are conducive to that environment's success. So what in the world do I mean? That's what my mother would probably be saying right now. What in the world does boy mean? You aspire to have a more inclusive environment, but it's not inclusive today.
Right.
So your marketing materials are like, hey, but we're there. So you use as many token people as you can, and you put them on these materials. And you start to get people to come in. You hire them. They're working there, and they actually like the work. But then they realize that the workplace is not conducive to their success. It is not looking to help them be successful. It is not welcoming to this inclusivity that you're looking for or that you're speaking about. It is actually to the contrary. It is like, man, you don't get your bleep 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 behind up out of here. We don't want you here. And it's like hell. So at least if you don't have the people, if it's not the best place, or a lot of people aren't there, at least put in place the things that you need to retain them. So maybe you go out and you find people and you talk to them and you say, I'm going to do a study and figure out what would a great workplace look like for groups of people or people who come from here. Like if you were working somewhere, what would make you want to stay? How could we retain you? Outside of money, how could we really retain you? And you start to put those things in place. But a lot of folks don't do that. They don't look to really have an inclusive workplace until the workplace has shifted and enough of those people are there that they make the changes themselves, I should say.
Yeah, it's almost a situation where the individuals that are devising these mechanisms of tokenism, right, don't feel the impact of what they're trying to falsely represent, right? If, for example, you put out there that your most successful associates within your organization, they're bilingual people. You got 3,000 people that work for your organization.
Yep.
And only 17 of them are bilingual. But you're highlighting the success of 17 out of, right?
Yep.
3,000 people that work there. Like, we're a great place to work. Look at how successful our bilingual people are.
Unless they're at the top.
Right.
Right. If they're at the top.
But you're struggling on the back end because of the other, right, 2,000 900 and such people
983.
are servicing, you know,
Yeah.
populations or demographics where being
Mhm.
bilingual would be helpful.
Yep.
And then you get in there, so now you're bilingual person number 18. And this is a great
Ah.
place to work. And then you're looking at what's going on, and you're like, yo, this was not the move. But the people who made that decision to make that something to be represented as a
Yeah.
major part of the organization, they're usually people that are not in position to feel the pain of not being bilingual. You understand what I'm saying? Like we can make this decision because I really
Yeah.
don't. It don't impact me to the
It
point where I
doesn't.
actually know what I'm doing. And then and then I'm out of touch, and I put this plastic campaign out. Like
Yeah.
some of this stuff be so weak. Like, all right, come on now, where did you find this? Where'd you find this guy? Why is he a
Yeah.
news anchor? Like me and my father-in-law, right? We we joke about some of the news anchors and some of the we travel a lot and some of
Yep.
the places you go, you watch the news, and you have a token.
Mm.
I'm sorry to say, news anchor
Mm-hmm.
from a
Mm-hmm.
particular demographic, and it never fails. This dude never has a lineup, right? He would. Wait a minute. You mean to tell me he represents us and he don't go to the barbershop in the hood? I don't understand. Like we
No,
see these things. It is
but
so obvious to us. It's not obvious to
they
those
talked
who put
about
it
it.
out there.
You know that they talk about that though, right?
Yeah.
To be accepted, right? You can't be in there with your sevens on fleek, right? Like your
Yeah.
whole joint. Like I ain't have a haircut like a monk, right? But your to those sharp edges, right?
You can't
Because when
have
you
that.
really you can't have that.
You
Like
can't have that.
you
You
don't
can't have
fit.
that.
You don't fit with the culture of what they're looking for. Like you literally, because right for many many folks who are running different corporations, you don't even see their hairlines because like their
Right.
joints, the hair falls over it. Or
Right.
if you see it, that joint start like back here. You know what I mean? And it go to
Yeah,
that
yeah,
like
yeah.
that little Sailor Moon thing right there.
Oh
So
no.
it's one of those situations where it's like, all right, cool. I don't want to be too aggressive. Like when they used to talk about Obama, like Obama, he didn't have his joint
Yeah,
all
yeah.
edged out. You know what I mean? His joint was kind of soft. He had the soft edge.
Yeah, the soft
You know what I
line.
mean?
Yep.
I show up on day one. They gonna be like,
Look,
yo.
my barber is going to be a part of the cabinet. You know what I'm saying? But listen, man, I want to get into this video, right?
Cool.
Because I believe this clip, all jokes aside, right? We're really making light of a situation that could have serious implications because of false pretenses being made. Um, and I found this clip, Rob, that I thought would be beneficial to our conversation and to the audience understanding exactly, where we're coming from. So we're gonna get into this clip, man. While y'all are listening, please put your feedback on what we're talking about in the chat and let us know what you think. And here we go.
So this month we talked about diversity and inclusion, covered a lot of ground and topics around that, unconscious bias, et cetera. And this week I want to talk about things that I think companies get wrong when it comes to D&I work and just addressing some of those. And the first one I think is tokenism. The idea for companies to be like, oh, we hired an Asian person. We're diverse, like we solved diversity. We're diverse now, and just check the box and move on. And I think this work isn't about that. It's not about just doing one simple thing and check the box and be like, okay, cool, we're good. The second thing is using D&I as a marketing campaign. And I think an example of that is, during Pride Week, 1 week of the year, we put out an ad and be like, hey, we're gay too, Listerine. Which if that is the only thing that you do, it is a superficial sort of show of support, right? It's kind of empty calories when it comes to if you don't do anything else that is additional, that's meaningful, you're actually like being a support. It is just, it's problematic. You're exploiting a marginalized group of people and their struggle just to be like for profit and like in a way that is not meaningful. I think that's like And it is important, I think, for companies and brands to use their platform to have these conversations and build awareness. I think that is positive. But if that is literally solely the only thing you do around this work, I think that's, bullshit. Third, I think a lot of companies overcommit to training, doing some like isolated event. Like let's bring somebody in, let's like do this training around diversity and inclusion, but don't actually integrate it. Don't actually do any meaningful work past that to follow through and actually make changes and look at systems and processes and procedures and make actual like real tactical changes inside the organization to like promote this work and value it. So it's becomes something that we again do to check the box, but without it being a sort of like we actually prioritize this. This is one of our values around like seeking more inclusivity, more diversity, and like doing it in a like more integrated way. Number 4.
Hey yo, I didn't say it.
Whatever you ain't say, I definitely know I ain't say it. What you ain't say? What did you not say, Brother Jamal?
Yo, he said it. He said tokenizing marketing campaigns. Do you know how insulting at the end of the day that is for individuals that are having a human experience around whatever it is that you're tokenizing? Like, I mean, I can see if you didn't know, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that may be the issue. You just don't know. But my issue is, why aren't you in the position where somebody is able to tell you that? Like, yo, we might want to pause on this. You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
All right, we're going to bring this person in. You know what I'm saying? We're going to tokenize this whole issue that we're having. And then we're going to, like he said, an overcommitment to training and then get in it. And then as soon as that training or that is over or that person leaves, you don't do anything tactical, operational, or substantial or sustains over time to reflect what you just exposed everybody to, as training content. Like it's incredible, man.
Well, let's be honest. A lot of the issues that we have in society are not new. And for us to, for some reason, be consistently in the learning phase is very sad and disheartening. And what I mean by the learning phase, folks bring in trainers to talk about what this thing is, and we never get to like the action phase. So it's like we're consistently in theory phase. Yeah, well, this is what this is, and this is how this works, and this is how this impacts folks. And we never get to that phase where it's like, and this is what we're going to do to make sure, one, we're going to find it if it's here, and we're going to stomp it out. And if it's not here, we're going to put things in place to make sure that it doesn't rise up and say peekaboo. Right. And now all of you are going to be on board, and you're all going to be held accountable to make sure that we get there. And that's really the issue, where it's like there's nothing that connects what you do from a day to day, because ultimately folks are like, hey, I don't want that to be the reason that I lose my top performer because he doesn't believe, she doesn't believe, or they don't believe in what that means or what that represents. So I would at least rather say, hey, I taught you what it was, and then let you ruin as many people as you can until I find out that you're not on board.
Yeah. And I mean, it's just difficult too, man, because it's not hard to understand that when you adopt these token initiatives or you identify people that you use as tokens, it's not hard to know that these singular efforts or these few people that you decided to be representative of everybody, it's not hard to understand that they don't represent the whole. Like these these things that you're trying to represent and do a better job at aren't monoliths. Like, you know what I'm saying? All men of color don't think the same. We don't, you know what I mean? Black men don't all come from the same place, right? Women don't all, you know what I mean, use the same lotion. Like, why are we
lotion, makeup, stockings,
right?
eyeliner? All of them don't even use eyeliner.
Like,
you know?
why are we making decisions on who and what represents what we struggle with, right? It's almost laughable if it wasn't so insulting at times. And we become so desensitized to it, right? We become so desensitized to it that it's almost alarming when somebody exposes it. Like, I was watching, and we use, to everybody who's new to this audience, right? We use sports as analogies all the time. I was watching a clip of a former NFL receiver who was talking about. He said, "Man, we got problems in the NFL, based on John Gruden, who was exposed recently for ignorant emails that were misogynistic, homophobic, and racist, right?" He said, but they're not exposing who he was emailing and their responses to some of the things he was saying. And he said, but that's just the stuff on the surface. He said, how about the NFL has to incentivize monetarily teams and franchises to have coaches, a significant or critical mass of coaches on their staff that look like the players that are on the field. When 85% of 85% of the NFL, are men of color, right? But the coaching staff is overwhelmingly not. And the NFL, who owns a day of the week, Sunday, they used to belong to the church in this country, has to pay NFL franchises an incentive. See, that's the insulting part. Now, what if you are a beneficiary, or what if you are a beneficiary of that tokenizing initiative? Now you got an interview and then ultimately a job as an NFL coach because of this incentive. And then the question becomes, Rob, did you get it because of the token initiative, or did you get it undeservingly? Did you get it undeservingly and you're not qualified because of the token initiative, or did you get it because you're qualified and the token initiative just availed you an opportunity that you would not have gotten in the first place? You know what I'm saying? Like, those are the things now that become the argument in the workplace. And this is where things get sticky. You're only here because of affirmative action, Jamal. Like, this type of stuff I heard. What do you mean? I put my application in just like everybody else.
Well, they had to put something special in place.
Excuse my elbow voice. That's the best I can come up with.
But you know what's crazy about that, bro? When you kind of think about it, folks focused so hard on getting rid of segregation, right? And the wildest part about it is I believe that many people believed that separate but equal did not work. So it's like, hey, now we're going to come together. But the piece that I think a lot of people forgot was the equal component, right? That didn't change, right? There were some doors open, but the same doors were not opened, right? And just the idea that you have a shorter leash, to use it for lack of a better term, if you're a coach and you're a person of color, right? Then your white counterparts, and on top of that, you will have a shorter career if you have one too many unsuccessful stints as a head coach. And we've had head coaches who have never won anything big. And then we had head coaches who have gotten there a number of different times, but whether it's because of what they look like or their age, they don't get another shot. So for me, I just get to the point where, do you take your time to argue with people about what they don't offer you? Because ultimately, all these folks, when they sit down, and we may not know for sure, but they're going to tell you it's their business. This is my company. And whoever I think is the right person to hire, I'm going to hire them. So I take heed to that. And I say, we should probably have our own, right?
Absolutely.
Because the only time you get anything equal is if people think you got your own. When you really think about it, somebody went to watch some of them games in the Negro Leagues and said, "Oh my goodness,
this is incredible.
These guys are nice,
very nice,
right?" And when you really think about it, Satchel Paige would have been the first guy to come through.
Exactly.
But he wasn't the guy that Jackie Robinson was. He wasn't like, yo, you know what? This the bigger picture. I'm gonna let this slide. And I hope that folks realize, like, the foundation of like that tokenism piece, it also came with, you were going to experience things, and still probably to this day, you're going to be the one who has to deal with the horrible culture of the place that you're trying to break into and help others break into. And you have to be the right type of person who could really sit and say, hey, I know I'm awesome at this, and I'm willing to stick through this, through whether it's racism, whether it's classism, whether it's sexism, something around your sexuality, whatever the case may be. You got to be the right type of person to sit through it, right?
And you know what?
And that those are the folks who are celebrated because they were able to deal with the ignorance of the people who were in power. And that right there is always where I struggle at. And that's why you'll hear, and this is no way to take anything away from Jackie Robinson.
Right, because he was a great man.
Great man. Great man. But a lot of folks will tell you there were so many of those Black baseball players that were awesome, but they were not the type of man that he was at that point in time to be able to deal with the things that he was able to deal with and see the bigger picture. So he bought into that. He bought into like, hey, I'm going to make this work.
If you look at stories about his life and stories about the color line in Major League Baseball being broken, Jackie Robinson very clearly had the clinical capacity to deal with the weight of what that was all about. And I think Tanisha, she put a great comment in the chat. Companies put diverse people on marketing campaigns all the time. The problem is many think it is okay. In fact, it is usually misleading and really offensive. And see, the key word in her comment is offensive.
Yeah.
Right? That people, when they realize why I'm here and what you want me to do, is like, so, but think about it like this, right? A company will invite other associates from the organization to participate in the marketing campaign, but didn't hire anybody in the department, in the marketing department. So that way you got to outsource. You got to outsource the marketing, the development of the marketing campaign to associates that work for the company that have different jobs, because there was no presence of mind. Hey, this marketing, we probably want to diversify up in here first before we put together a marketing campaign that we now have to tokenize through people that marketing ain't their job. It's not your job.
Your marketing campaign to attract these different groups of people will have more dollars in it than your recruiting budget to find them, as well as your training dollars to make sure that the environment is conducive for their success. And it is very, very strange when you look at it. Folks will bring folks in for diversity initiatives, and then they don't have the resources. And a lot of it, you're that token person. We want to say we're working on something, and when things die down, that's why I told folks after the death of brother George Floyd, we were supposed to go on offense. And you push and you push and you say, nah, that's not enough. Nah, that's not enough. Because if we're not, then we got to figure out how to do it on our own. Because if we're not going to push the folks who are empowered to do more, then you got to do it on your own. And I say that with the idea of, could you imagine if the color line is never broken, but you still start to get the super athletes that start to be born going into the Negro League? So then what do we end up having? We probably, instead of having you going to MLB, maybe you end up getting a merger. And you take some of the best things and all the players come over. And maybe you get 3 or 4 new teams, and then some of those other players go on to those other teams. But now the guys from the Negro Leagues more or less come in like the ABA.
Right,
and
right,
all
right.
these different pieces that made the ABA awesome, those great pieces were brought into the NBA.
And you know what? There's more elements of the ABA that survived
Mm-hmm.
than the NBA that was present at that time.
Mm-hmm.
If you look at both leagues,
Mm-hmm.
right, the ABA folded, but when it was absorbed by the NBA, today there's more of the ABA that's left from an
Mm-hmm.
ideological standpoint. And right, don't get us wrong, right? I think organizations that are responsible and really want to get it right
Mm-hmm.
should ask, right?
Yeah.
Their should depend on and should be able to lean on their associates from other departments.
Yep.
But you got to do it the right way. You have to be intentional and genuine and
Mm-hmm.
engaging your staff to find out what they're thinking, how they feel, and what their suggestions are that they can that the company can take on to do things better
Yeah.
from a inclusionary standpoint. Because
Mm-hmm.
the gentleman that was in this clip, I forgot his name. I'll look it up. Galen Emmanuel, I believe is his name, right? He talks about later on in this clip about how there are introverted people, there are
Mm-hmm.
people with special needs and disabilities, there are
Yeah.
people that have different cultural backgrounds and things of that nature that are extremely or could be extremely valuable
Yeah.
to your bottom line if you just included them
Mm-hmm.
in your operations,
Yep.
right? It's
It's true.
from a planning, from a think tanking standpoint, and not just a
Mm-hmm.
logistical. You do this, right? No. And I remember, and I'm sure you do. I had a very stimulated conversation via email with a
Uh-oh.
corporate leader about that very same thing. You need to use wait a minute. In difficult times, your employees have become professionals
Mm-hmm.
because of the demand of the
Mm-hmm.
time, because it's
Yep.
difficult. So now we have graduated in this context, in this organization,
Mm-hmm.
outside of being employees. We're all professionals that can
Yeah.
bring value and have specific institutional knowledge from the different places in different regions of the organization that can help you not solve it like we got the silver bullet, but that can help you
Yeah.
solve some of these issues. Ask your staff.
But you got to be humble enough
Yep.
and have enough humility to say, listen, we're not just on the same level as people. We're on the same level as colleagues, as staff, as team members. And sometimes folks don't want to come out the high tower
The ivory
to
tower.
talk, right? To talk to folks who they consider to be peasants.
Right.
Right. Listen, just get the work done. Let me worry about the strategy and let me worry about how the messaging is going to go. Let me worry about that. You just get the day-to-day stuff done. Not knowing that when people start to offer their advice, sometimes it's not just because they think they're smart, but it's because they know what you're talking about isn't working. And they're trying to give you some game because they're like, hey, I want to make sure that this organization survives. I want to make sure that this company thrives. But I got a feeling that you're going the wrong way. And going to go wrong way always ends up in a crash. So it's one of those situations, bro, where when you look at it, yeah, bro, when you look at it, it's like, yo, we really got to figure this out and get out of our own way and be okay with hearing things from people that we normally wouldn't be hearing.
Yeah. And I tell you, an acute corporate trauma experience
Mm-hmm.
is an individual or group of individuals that realize after the fact that they have been used either as tokens themselves or
Mm-hmm.
used in a token initiative
Mm-hmm.
that was plastic, like Galen said, empty calories,
Mm-hmm.
with no real intention to make any substantial change for the better.
Mm-hmm.
That's when people come to that cross. A lot I've seen it where that's where people come to that crossroads. Do I
Yeah.
lead and
Mm-hmm.
take my righteous indignation and try to pull something together behind these organizational walls because this was crap. This was one of the. This is
Yeah.
absolutely ridiculous, or they just leave. You know, I'm
Bro,
out.
I I struggle with that because, bro, we represent a group of people, and I want to make sure I say this the right way. We represent a group of people who not only have been fighting for our own self good, right? But at all points in times, we have been consistently holding this country to the ideals that is set forth just by fighting for what we believe is right. And there's a sacrifice in that because consistently being the moral compass or being righteous, you're not going after the money. You're not going to be in the places to produce generational wealth because you're always in social issues. You're always in a moment where you're fighting for someone else's social justice and civil rights. So when you're doing that, you have generations of people who are working at companies and just making the bread. While we have always, there's a mass number of us always out here taking on these jobs of working with kids, of working with the elderly. That's why when you really think about it, whether it was New York or the folks on the West Coast, it was delayed, and I want to make sure that other people understand this. The impact of COVID was delayed on Black and Brown people because Black and Brown people don't travel all over the world in mass numbers. But in large cities, if you get on the airplane, if you take public transportation, if you look at your taxi and your Uber and your Lyft drivers, if you look at your bus drivers, if you look at your street cleaners, if you look at your people who pick up your garbage, if you look at the people who clean up your streets, they're Black and brown.
That's right.
If you look at the people who are CNAs, if you look at the folks who are nurses, if you look at the folks who are helping out your mom and your dad, the elderly individuals, they were Black and brown.
Right.
So what did you start to see? It was delayed, but when folks start coming back from all these different countries, who was there without masks? Who was there to push your elderly parents through the airport? I have not been to an airport in many cities and not seen people who look like me or are a part of the diaspora.
That's a fact.
Right? Doing that type of work. And it's sad and it's a shame that it's expected that we'll be those type of people. It's expected that we'll always be pushing the case. And guess what? In present day, folks don't get the love. But 20 years later, as long as they wasn't violent, they're looked at as the most loved, as the people who were doing it the right way. And it's like, but think about what you had to sacrifice. Let's be honest. Muhammad Ali probably does not lose a fight. Right? When you think about it, Muhammad Ali came back. I don't know if he was fat, but he was bigger, right? He wasn't slim like he was when he was Cassius. Like it wasn't. He probably wasn't.
He missed
right?
a part of his window.
So you're talking about. I believe he lost at least 3 years. So when you kind of look, it was sacrificed for his ideals. And yes, Kaepernick may not have been the best quarterback, but I do know before he was injured, folks were like he was the future of what quarterbacks would be. Mm-hmm. And guess what? You may not want to give him credit, but I want you to look at what the NFL looks like now. And I'll end it with this. Bro, only thing we need, and that's why when people say representation doesn't matter, they don't understand. Once black and brown people, but let me just talk to folks that I know. Once black folks know that they can do it. Oh, he can do it? Oh, if he can do it, I can do it too. Oh, yeah. Oh, I could be even better.
That's
and
then
guess what?
That's a real
right. Concept, and then guess what happens? What black quarterbacks were not getting in the past, they weren't getting properly trained until they got further into, let's say, past high school and into college.
Right.
Now, parents are like, wait, man, my son could be like Patrick Mahomes. Oh, his dad looked like your dad. How about, okay, I'm gonna call your dad, but I don't get along with him. But I want you to pay for Lil Ray Sean to get a quarterback coach.
Right.
I'll go half with you. We'll do $400 a month. And you're going to see so many guys pop up who are dual threats, who can run like a running back and throw like Peyton Manning. It is on its way.
And that same concept is true within the corporate industrial complex. Right. See, to complement your point, Rob, if you fix the flat tire, the whole car goes faster. Right. This is why I appreciate the platform that we've created from our perspective, which is a very specific, from a very specific experience, being men of color in the corporate industrial complex. But because of our experience and everything that it entails, because statistically, people who come from our demographic are at the bottom of the list.
Yeah.
Of everything good and at the top of everything bad, right? That's just a fact, right? So to hear these universal issues within the corporate industrial complex coming from us, you're going to hear things that you may not even thought about, which is good for the whole. But if you specifically target the flat tire on the car, I don't care if you got a Cadillac, I don't care if you got a 1968 Buick LeSabre, I don't care if you have a Chrysler 300 or a Ford F-250 with the double tires on the back. If one of them joints is flat, the car the Ferrari is not going to roll as fast. You got to fix the flat tire. And if you fix the flat tire, which is the demographics that we talk about so much on these podcast episodes, the whole car goes faster.
But you got to believe that, Maul. I don't think people believe that. They're like, man, look, man, the car only can go 140. No, better yet, the car can only go 140. We're going about 127. $130. The work that we got to put in to fix that flat tire is not worth that extra 10 miles, right? Not worth the extra 10 miles per hour. And not knowing sometimes in getting that tire fixed is you not only move faster, but you can carry more. You can do more because now you have the vehicle operating at full capacity, bro. That's a great point. And I don't think society cares.
You know why they're starting to believe it, Rob?
Yeah, they are.
Because the passengers is complaining about the driver and trying to get out the car.
He's trying to get out. I'm done.
They getting out the car, Rob.
No.
Get in the car. They getting out the car, man. They getting out the
Get
car.
Get in the car.
They getting out the car.
They ain't gotta tell me. I tell folks real quick, man. I'll be going with you. You ain't gonna play me. I don't owe you not a thing. You know what I mean? I might have love for you, but I'm not gonna sit there and take things that I wouldn't take from people who I actually care about.
And I'm trying to fix this tire.
That's it, bro. Oh, you don't think the tire?
If I'm gonna be a token for anything, I'm gonna be a token for fixing this tire because I know that I'm gonna go from a token to being representation of a whole lot of people who would not have gotten the opportunity, who wouldn't have gotten the recognition, the acknowledgement, who wouldn't have gotten their just due because the car is not driving properly.
That's a fact, bro.
You know what I'm saying? So
it's a fact,
and that's what we do. That's what we do willingly. Like we ain't trying to get in front of cameras and being made a caricature of who we really are. But you'll see there's a lot of people that are willing to tokenize themselves by making sacrifices for future people not to deal with what they've had to deal with. And that's not tokenism. That's sacrifice and representation, and laying down yourself for the greater good, even if you're not around to see it.
There you go.
Man, great talk. Great talk. We got the final word, man, before we close out. Tokenism, the inclusion illusion.
Inclusion illusion. Listen, don't believe the hype. Trust your gut. Sometimes it might lead you wrong, but it's better to trust yours than everybody else's because you have no idea why they're telling you what they're telling you. And we're made to be great. And I would just end it with like this. There is no telling where civilization will go when we're finally able to move how we were blessed to move. No restraints, no hills in front of us, just the smoothest and nicest drive. When we have an opportunity to move in all our greatness, with all grace, be surprised. Don't be surprised if we're not just going to Mars, we're in a whole nother solar system. Because like we're meant for greatness, and we're supposed to also take civilization to the next level. So I can't wait for us to get there. Sound like somebody about to snipe me out the window. I just they got him. Listen, you know what I mean? So I'll leave it there.
Yeah. Nah, great point. All right, y'all. We'll see y'all next week. Great talk. Thank you for joining us. Thank you for all of those who chimed in, especially Tanisha and Calvin. Calvin talked about he hears about there's guys working toward their own league now. You mentioned the Negro leagues, right? That history. And Tanisha also made a point. That some of the tokenism aspects of tokenism is how offensive ads, like the Pepsi Kendall Jenner ad, if those of you may remember that. So remember, y'all, corporate trauma is a sneaky passive trauma that'll creep up on you, especially if you realize you were a token. And when you do, it's best that you do what?
level up.
See y'all next week.
Peace.